A lot of times with Facebook, we talked about sharing one generation deep. With Twitter, sharing multiple generations deep. With LinkedIn, those 6 degrees of separation really gets you to find what shared generations you have with potential customers. And so that's probably something, if you were to take anything out of the discussion about LinkedIn, look at it as probably one of the most important networking tools currently at your disposal. Look at what professional organizations you're interested in. What professional organizations are you a part of? What interests do you share and what ways do you want to connect? Because you're going to find those groups in LinkedIn. You're going to find very helpful questions and answers throughout LinkedIn. And most importantly, you might be able to suddenly discover that, hey, there's my buddy from college. Oh, he's a vice president here? And all of a sudden you start making these connections. And all of a sudden, LinkedIn doesn't become a resume sharing platform. LinkedIn becomes a very powerful networking and sales generation platform. With LinkedIn, I'll leave you with one challenge. I'd love to hear when, not if, when it works. Go to Walmart or your department store of choice. Buy yourself an egg timer. Set it for 15 minutes. I want you to sit down on LinkedIn 15 minutes every day you're in the office. 15 minutes. It replaces coffee break, smoke break. Normally I'm not supposed to be looking on the internet, but I'm really looking on the internet time. Take 15 minutes. Get into some LinkedIn groups. Find ones you're interested in. Start answering questions. Start participating in groups. But here's the kicker of the challenge. I don't want you to sell. Don't mention your company. Don't mention that you can buy from me. Simply answer questions. Simply be a help. See how effective that is in making additional connections and and see what happens to leads that potentially come in. Starts working, try the same thing on Twitter. And suddenly you have a very interesting network of connections of suddenly what you say is equally as important as who you are saying it. Your content now has context. You can point to this and say, yeah, see, I know what I'm talking about. See all these questions I answered? See how big of a help I am? Hey, this guy I knew online answered the question that I had. He might know what you're talking about. All of a sudden, those connections start coming in. And very quickly, you'll start seeing how all of these tools very quickly begin meshing together to be a help to your business. Really, in closing, I want to leave you with kind of 3 small business social media tips. Like I mentioned earlier, your business needs to be personable, not just personal. You can leave discussions of your kids aside unless your business has to do with children. Be personable. You don't have to be personal, but be approachable, conversational, engaging. And that's sometimes a very tough line to draw, the separation between personable and personal. Negatives can be positives. Like we had talked about, don't run from social media just because someone might say something bad about you. Look at it as an opportunity to demonstrate your customer service. Look at it as an opportunity to demonstrate your expertise. and look at it as an opportunity to say, bad experiences aren't the norm, I hope. But the coolest thing people see when they see those answers, they see that you're paying attention, that you care about your business, you care about your customer's experience. And finally, content and context. Probably one of the greatest things people can do to improve their websites, improve the writing on your website, improve the content of your website. Is your most recent news up there? Do you have little tips or tricks or helpful information that can be out there? Because the content of your website means very, very little if you don't put it in a greater context of a larger discussion. And the best way to build that context discussion is through social media. Frame the discussion. You have the ability in social media to begin to define the market. And the tools are right there at your disposal. So, any questions? I know I kind of covered quite a bit here.
What is the best first step to take if you've not really done a lot of it?
The best first step to take in getting started in everything is obviously setting up accounts, but also look at it from the standpoint of don't be afraid to set up your accounts and do nothing but sit and listen. Because sitting and listening may give you a good idea of the framework of the discussions. Because if you decide to jump in with both feet, you may or may not hear the entire discussion, and you don't want to frame your response out of context. So when people are setting up their accounts for the first time, probably one of the first things that I'd say is, you know what, don't be afraid to take a few days, a few weeks, or even a couple of months to simply sit and listen. Listen and see who some of the important players are. See who carries the most trust in your interest community. A lot of times people will find that people from very different walks of life may carry the most gravitas, the most weight with the community, and that's going to be something that you won't know until you start spending time in that community, if that makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions of like management tools to kind of be able to look at?
Yeah. Social media has a lot of management tools out there. And some of them are very easy to use. Some of them are more complex. Which management tools to use getting started is probably best to simply start with the individual platforms. Open a browser window for Twitter, open a browser window for Facebook, open a browser window for LinkedIn. Once you're comfortable with that, you can get into what are called social media dashboards. These dashboards are platforms like TweetDeck, Seismic, and the one I prefer is called Hootsuite. Yes, they spend a lot of time coming up with very unusual names for some of these platforms. But what's nice about social media dashboards is you are able to manage multiple accounts. So you can update Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, even things like Foursquare and soon Google+. Those are all platforms that you'd be able to update from a single interface. From a listening standpoint, these are hugely beneficial because you can have Twitter lists. You can organize people you follow on Twitter into lists. You can follow a specific list, in a social media dashboard, or you can have an ongoing search in a social media dashboard. For example, I mentioned the client that we have in Door County. We have an ongoing search that anytime on Twitter someone mentions Door County or Sturgeon Bay, it shows up. So you look at the keywords associated with your business, and you'd be able to monitor, listen, maintain, respond, and engage, being helpful, that audience. And so from getting started, sometimes something like a social media dashboard can be a little overwhelming, because you'll see it and it's almost kind of, how many people have seen the movie The Matrix, where you see all that code kind of floating down like rain? And it kind of might seem like that at the beginning, but you very quickly realize there are patterns and you can manage it fairly easily. So social media dashboards, it's kind of like choosing, do you like Ford, do you like Chevy? It's a matter of taste which ones you like. Each of the different ones have different features and benefits different to them. Again, I'm a fan of Hootsuite, but I'm monitoring probably more than I should. Go ahead.
How will Google Plus fit into all this, and what's the basis behind it?
Google Plus, how Google Plus fits into all of this for business is actually a very, very good question. Google just last week opened its platform up to business pages. Google has gotten into social media. This is its third attempt to try to get into social media, but this one looks like it's going to work. Google Plus has a rather unique platform. If Facebook is the hug, Twitter's the handshake, LinkedIn's the hot cup of coffee, Google Plus is the huddle. Google Plus has a feature around it specifically that's going to impact businesses from the standpoint of something called circles. When you have a Google social media account or a Google Plus account, you can organize the people you're connected with into circles. These circles are just an easy way of sorting people. Okay, these people are the people I know professionally, these are the companies that I'm following, and you can pick and choose not only who shows up in your stream, but you can pick and choose who receives your notifications or your updates. Now, it's a double-edged sword. It's bad for businesses from the standpoint of now you have to compete doubly hard to make sure your content is important enough for people to keep in that important circle. The reverse is also true, is your business can now target messages to specific circles. So the people who are plussing you or liking you, your business, you can organize those people into different circles. So these are existing customers, these are potential customers, these are vendors, in as many circles as you would like. So you can target that message you send out specific to customers. Hey, existing customers, you get an additional 15% off if you order before Christmas. Potential customers, you get 20% off if you order before Christmas. You have that ability to tailor and customize your message specific to your audience. But that also means that context fight, you're going to have to fight doubly hard to get engaged and to keep that spot. Keep your relevance, keep that level of trust up to show up in a Google Plus stream. So while Google Plus for businesses is only a week old, it's really become apparent that it's going to be a fight for businesses to keep relevant. Any other questions?
Stephanie, maybe you want to talk just briefly about the commitment to doing it Like everybody here will go home and have that enthusiasm. And then it's sort of like that diet that you start every Monday. Not that that has ever happened to me, but how you create that long-term commitment, and in a business where people are stretched thin, the importance of allocating people to represent your brand voice and to stay the course.
Social media, kind of like any bright new shiny thing, may feel it gets old and dull and not as cool as it once was. You have what's called a burn-off rate for social media users. People start it all hot and heavy and wonderful, things like that. Next week, I don't have quite as much time to put into it. The week after that, a little less time to put into it, and they start drifting off. And that's actually more damaging to your business than to not do it at all. And the one thing that is kind of nice about the whole egg timer routine, whether you use it for LinkedIn, you use it for Facebook, or you use it for social media as a whole. I'm going to say I'm going to dedicate 20 minutes a day to social media for my business. And you set that egg timer. Well, don't take that egg timer off your desk. Let that be a reminder to you to do it every day, every other day, twice a week. You set your schedule. But just like people who have become accustomed to email marketing, you keep your schedule or you die. Because nothing will break the trust that you've formed with your interest community than if you form those relationships and start that communication, then all of a sudden you quit showing up. You lose that top of mind positioning. So it becomes important to look at your social media and say, okay, how much time do I want to invest in it? Because one of the biggest misnomers is that social media is free. Nope. Time costs money. And you look at this and say, and you start weighing the thing, okay, how long is it going to take me to learn this, to put together some kind of strategy surrounding it? Because this is something, don't just, the analogy of a streaker might not be terribly important, but somewhat relevant. Someone who goes running across the soccer field, everyone just kind of, tackled by police and carted off. Who remembers it? Well, a couple people might show up on the evening news, but don't let that be your social media. A few people looking at it and saying, I remember that, and being gone. Go into it with some kind of strategy. What composes a halfway decent social media strategy? Set up a goal. Not necessarily saying, okay, I want to get X number of customers from social media by Y date. It's not quite that mathematical. One of the key arguments surrounding social media, Twitter especially, is people will turn around and say, what's the ROI, the return on investment in social media? If I invest all this time and money, what kind of return can I expect? One of the more prominent social media speakers, very crassly but accurately, makes the analogy, well, what's the ROI for talking on the phone with your mother? Do you measure and weigh that? Do you measure and weigh the ROI of every relationship you make? Probably not. One of the analogies I prefer to make is, when was the last time you went to a trade show? And when was the last time you had that bundle of pens made? Or you put together a big chunk of notepads? How are you measuring the ROI just on your trade show swag? Have you even thought about measuring it? Because that's a lot less engaging and a lot less relationship-based than what you would do on social media. Do you know where those pens ended up? Do you know who has your notepad? Probably not. But You'll be able to see, monitor, and engage with every single person that has made that connection with you on social media. So when you look at saying, what are my grand plans for a strategy, or how do I measure getting started, look at it from the perspective of simply saying, what do I want to get from it? Do I want to increase brand awareness for my business? Do I want to find out who my market really is? Do I want to measure how well am I thought of? How well is my business thought? How well is my business thought of in my target market? Those are all questions that you can get answers for and keep track of via social media. Now, we are getting to an age where you can have commerce transactions over Facebook. People can place orders straight on Facebook. But again, you still want to start measuring things like, well, really, where do you want people to go? Do you want to use Facebook as a vehicle or a destination? And that's going to be, as you look at it and say, start measuring, how much time do I want to put into this? How much time can I afford to have one of our team members put into this? Please, 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 please. Do not simply sit back and say, I'm going to have some college intern manage our social media. Would you have that same college intern be your sales manager for the summer? Be in charge of all sales transactions? Probably not. Would you put that intern in charge of rebranding your entire company? Probably not. Managing your social media is at the same level as a sales director, as a brand manager, because they completely control the mouthpiece or the voice of your social media and your brand in the social presence.